Hello and welcome to another Dev Diary for Crusader Kings 3. So, we are now past the lifestyle Dev Diary deluge, and while I will reiterate this again, I do think it is a good idea for them to show the lifestyles. I appreciate them showing them, but at the same time, I am very glad to see the back of them. I think maybe they should have been spaced out between more meaty Dev Diaries like this one is. More mechanical Dev Diaries, because just having, lifestyle after lifestyle after lifestyle after lifestyle week after week is got a little bit tiring, not gonna lie. Good that they showed them. Probably could have been better distributed amongst the diaries. But anyway, all that is behind us. The lifestyles have been shown. And we're on to looking at tutorials, tooltips, and encyclopedias. So, let us get into the Dev Diary. Hello everyone, and welcome to the 16th CK3 Dev Diary. I'm Matthew, one of the programmers on CK3. Some of you might have seen me around the Discord server or on the forums from when I was on CK2. I started out as a modder on CK2, and then a couple of years ago started working as a content designer in-house at Paradox, before moving into the programming role where I've been for the past year and a half. As with the whole team, I am of course very excited to be finally able to talk about the game after all our secrecy, so without further ado, let us discuss the wonder of making pixels appear on the screen and convey useful information. Now, I do believe Matthew's mod was the Game of Thrones mod, if I'm not mistaken, which was very highly received. So if I'm right on that, his modding is very good. So there is that. Right. CK2 is one of my favourite games, even before I started working here, and I've sunk thousands of hours into modding and playing it. But I think we can all be honest here and together and admit something. It had a UI with what one might describe as a questionable usability. That is something that I've seen quite a lot of people say. The UI would have been a bit of a barrier to entry for many people. So yeah, no, I can agree with that. I know when I started playing CK2 that I very quickly had to stop and go watch many hours of tutorials online, because the UI was hard to use and buried relevant info without ever giving you an inkling of where to look. Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. I mean, when I first found CK2, it was a discount code in my Steam inventory. And to find out what the hell this game was, I went and looked on YouTube for people playing it to see just what this game was. And, well, I found out how to play via watching Northern Lion, so you can imagine how well that went. I probably picked up some bad habits from him on that one. But yeah, definitely going to watch tutorials on how to play the game is something that is fairly ubiquitous among Paradox titles. I know I wouldn't have been able to pick up Victoria 2 without some tutorials, or more, not really tutorials, but watching people play. Same for Hearts of Iron 4. I watched Mordred Viking to learn Hearts of Iron 4. I watched Shenra to learn CK2. Sorry, not CK2. Shenra to learn Vicky 2. And then Arumba to learn EU4. So, yeah, Paradox definitely has a barrier to entry problem in its earlier titles. Imperator was the only one that I didn't have that barrier to entry, because it was so similar to the way that EU4 played that the differences were things that I could get used to on my own, and I didn't have that barrier to entry. As well, it was the first one that I was looking at before it came out. And I was looking at all the dev diaries, so there wasn't anything especially new, and I knew where everything was just by reading the dev diaries. But that's not a normal thing for most people. When they pick up a game for the first time, they haven't read thousands and thousands of words of this is how the game works. So anyway, a bit of a ramble there, apologies for that. This is something we very much want to avoid for CK3 for obvious reasons. The strategy and challenge of the game should come from mastering its systems, not finding which button you need to click or which number you need to tooltip. I'd like to quickly give a big shout out to our wonderful user research team who's done lots of playtests with players of various experience levels in strategy games and given us lots of great feedback, all of which has been invaluable in ensuring the various features of this dev diary can help to guide a new player who is unsure of what to do, whilst also letting an expert to blaze through with doing what they want. Very nice. A lot of work has been put into making the interfaces cleaner and display relevant information to let you dive right in and explore it in the way that most of you probably will when you first launch the game. The first thing that will confront you when you open up and choose where to play is an option of if you want to start the guided tutorial or just dive in on your own. We're going to go down the guided tutorial, otherwise this dev diary would lose quite a chunk of the content. I will say I've actually never done any tutorial for any Paradox game. I've just watched YouTube. I found that it's always been the best way. Paradox tutorials, generally speaking, haven't been the best. I think actually a large part of that is because as DLCs get added to the game over time, the tutorials need to be updated to follow what is in the DLCs, but also follow what is now the base game, and there's that disconnect there, and it just gets a whole mess, and those tutorials sort of get left behind, and so they're not especially relevant to the current state of the game, no matter when you pick it up, other than if you pick it up right on release. But anyway, moving on. Welcome new player. Crusader Kings 3 is a deep strategy game featuring interesting characters and intrigue. If you're new to the world of Crusader Kings, we strongly recommend you play the tutorial. I'd rather read the tutorial. I probably won't be playing this tutorial either. But anyway, in the tutorial it will take you take control of the petty king Murshid MacDonald of Munster. Yes, we fully embrace Tutorial Ireland as our starting location. Yeah, no, I guess they should have leaned into that, so it makes sense. The tutorial will guide you through the various parts of the interface and mechanics of the game. It will open the windows you need to see and highlight the relevant pieces of information, such as how to navigate the map, interacting with characters, and getting married. All of this takes place in-game, so it will be showing you the exact places in the UI you're meant to be looking at and interacting with instead of lumping just walls of text or screenshots at you. Makes sense. I'm not going to go through every piece of information here, as that is best served by going through the tutorial yourself once the game is released, rather than me parroting the text here. But suffice to say, it will give you a good starting grasp on how to use the UI and the core mechanics to get you started and playing. One of the new features in CK3 is Tooltips in Tooltips. The aim of this is that the relevant information can just be a mouse move away whenever you see a blue highlighted text in the game. I've seen this in action a little bit when I was at ParadoxCon, and it is bloody good. There can be these... So you highlight over these blue text, you click it, and it opens another box. In that new box, there can be more highlighted text. And you can click that and open another box. And apparently you can go up to like 1,000 boxes without the game going mental on you and crashing or anything. So yeah, there's no shortage of tooltips in tooltips that you can do, apparently. Instead of making you dig through a wiki to find out what a game concept means, you can just mouse over it to get an explanation. For example, if you tooltip the word duchy, here you get this pop-up. A duchy is a title, and you can click on title. Ranking below a kingdom and above a county, blah 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 blah. Everyone knows what a duchy is, fair enough. This behavior is nesting, so you can get more and more information. So all the blue highlighted text game concepts in this can also be highlighted to explain what a ruler is and what a title itself is. Yeah, boxes in boxes in boxes in boxes in boxes. There are two different modes for tooltips in tooltips, timer lock and action lock, with the former being the default. These modes determine what causes the tooltips in tooltips to lock in place and stay, either a timer which is configured in the settings menu, or by clicking in the middle mouse button to manually lock them in place. We have these two modes so that once you get more comfortable with the game, you can turn the tooltips in tooltips into an opt-in mode with the action lock for when you come across something you want to see, instead of it being more present trying to aid you. Alright, that's an interesting way of doing it. Yeah, because otherwise if you like accidentally hover over something and it'll pop up and it'll sort of get in the way, but I guess if you can sort of, I want to keep this here, and then I'll move this over in this area, and then I also want to read this, so I'll click it, I'll move it over here, lock it in place, middle mouse button. Yeah, that's an interesting way of doing it. Once you finish the guided section of the tutorial, the reactive advice section begins. These are bits of advice that appear as purple info during normal gameplay. They'll give you a mini tutorial based on your current state in the game. If you remember from the tutorial section pop-up, the second option was to dive in on your own. That option skips the guided tutorial and jumps you right into play and receives the in-game advice, so this is always going to be there, it seems. For example, if your bishop is not endorsing you and refusing to give you those taxes and troops that you rightfully deserve, as mentioned in Dev Diary 6, then you can click the little bubble and get a rundown of what that means for you instead of needing to find it on the wiki or find the relevant Dev Diary. You can almost think of this as an in-game advisor. It'd be nice if it had it sort of leaned into that this advice wasn't coming from the game, but it was actually coming from, a close friend or like a literal advisor to you. That'd be nice to see, actually. I think I'd prefer to see that instead of it being sort of fourth wall breaking. By the way, your bishop is not endorsing you, and these are the mechanics behind why. But either way, I mean, it's still good that it's there for sure. As the guided tutorial, this advice will highlight relevant interface elements to show you where to look, as well as give examples of actions you could potentially take. The reactive advice can be reset in the settings menu to show advice that you've already seen again if you feel like you're forgetting information and need a quick refresher. The reactive advice is also usable in multiplayer, so your friends you just introduced to the game can play with you and still get the advice they may need. That's good stuff. Throughout the course of the game, other pieces of information will appear in this top bar. As with our other games, alerts about things that require your attention will appear, such as prompting you to go get married, or that you have no heir of your dynasty and risk the game ending on your death. These alerts are all something that can be solved by you taking relevant actions to make them disappear, which clicking them will take you to the suitable action. They're not a status reminder of something constant, such as being at war or having a truce expiring soon, as sometimes happens in our other games because those are not things you can take an action to fix. Still, it'd be nice to have, the truce is expiring soon up here, so you can hover over it and you can get a rundown of all your truces, so you know exactly when things are ending and when you can go back to war with the mean bastard across the border. It shouldn't just be for relevant actions you can take right now, I don't think. Having the truce expiring soon, as a good example, that's probably a good idea. Being at war, not necessary, because that's at the bottom. Showing the war score and all that. That doesn't need to be at the top. But this and other such things like that, probably a good idea to have still. I don't know why they've got rid of that. Alongside the alerts and advice in the top bar is the Issues tab. This shows some summaries of your current situation, such as claims you can press, duchies you can create, or the fact you have emptied the realm's coffers, and are bankrupt and in desperate need of money. These are things you may wish to take action on, but are not urgent thing to fix. I don't know, debt is a pretty big thing to fix, actually, in CK2. It's kind of devastating, actually. Or potentially not something you can instantly fix, like bankruptcy. You can think of them almost as mini alerts. Alongside these are suggestions of things you can do. They will appear as, and based on your current situation, give you the task you may wish to do. Every few months they will appear and can be dismissed as you see fit, or entirely disabled in the settings menu once you feel you can work without them. Again, it'd be nice if this was leaned into as your advisor advises you that this country across the border is out of allies, he's probably got fewer troops than us, and we have a claim on his territory, we should totally take it from ourselves. They should lean into the role play, I think. In our playtest, this feature has proven useful for both new and old players, as it gives guidance to new players of things they can do in this big sandbox world, and for the more experienced players it acts as a good checklist whilst playing for things you know you want to handle. So we've got stuff like create a duchy, you can declare wars, rulers hold your de jure lands, claims can be pressed, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it'd be nice if they leaned into the roleplay though. For less long-term information or pressing things to solve, there are two methods of showing new information. I'm going to scroll up because that is a bit distracting. Yeah, there we go. Notifications and toasts. A notification is what it says on the tin, really, like the message feed in CK2. Smaller pieces of information which are sent over. They're not necessarily some big situation you may need to pay attention to, and generally relate to the happenings of other characters that you may care to see. Only a few will be displayed at a time, and minimize themselves to allow room for the next one before automatically dismissing themselves after some in-game time has passed. So I guess that's this. Okay, I can see how that works. And it doesn't look like it's going to be that annoying. Like if it's 29th of March, 8th of April, 16th of June. So you're getting like roughly one a month. So I think that's okay. Toasts, on the other hand, are slightly more bombastic compared to the more timid sibling notifications, as they appear at the top of the screen and inform you of good things to celebrate, and sometimes less good things to commiserate about. They're used for things like the outcomes of events, and to tell you what outcome in the dice roll you got without throwing up a huge event window or having it appear as a small notification, and for feedback on actions you've taken. Unlike notifications, they'll only show one at a time in timed queue to show the next. Of course, if you mouse over them, that timer will stall itself until you move the mouse away again. Oh, that's interesting. Gain the trait Diligent. Oh, that's the only one. That looks like it's right in the middle of the screen. It's interesting, like the graphics for it is very in your face. Like the shield like going big and then smaller again, and then the scroll like coming outwards. It is very in your face. Now last, but in my opinion not least, is the new in-game Encyclopedia. It acts as a central place where information on many different parts of the game can be found, from highlightable game concepts mentioned before to recaps of the guided tutorial and reactive advice, to the various types of terrains and traits present in the game and their effects. So it's basically the wiki in-game. Sort of. That's cool, I like that. Though I will say, if I'm looking for traits, I think it can show more than 3 on a fucking page. Come on. That can be like, you can probably fit 8 at least here without it looking squished. Like, seriously, come on now. This is Paradox UI in a nutshell, taking far more space than is necessary, and not using the space available. I do, though, very, very much enjoy this very dark, kind of scroll-like UI. I think this is beautiful. I love this. I just think that the scale of this is way off. The encyclopedia contains various pages and is fully searchable, as well as including a history of searches and the pages they were on, which can be used to scroll back and forward between searches. All the information on these pages is automatically generated by the game from our script files, so unlike pages on a fan wiki, they will automatically update if any values or descriptions change. That's awesome. I wonder, does that also include mods? Because if I have a mod that, for example, changes Seducer to be a +5 intrigue and +27% fertility and +20 attraction opinion, will that automatically find that information and put it there without the modder having to go and edit the encyclopedia? From this, I would assume yes. Although I can't imagine, or it might, if you added a completely new trait with your own little artwork piece, all of your own stuff, your own description, will that also add? Because if it's pulling it automatically, it's automatically generated by the game, then surely if you've got a mod that adds in all this stuff, then the encyclopedia will automatically generate the modded content as well. That's got to be the case. Because if that's the case, that's fucking awesome. That's really cool. That's very modder friendly. I really hope that that's the case. And I think it is, just from the way that I'm reading this. Something I'd like to mention about all the new features I've talked about here is that they are entirely moddable. Mods are free to create new game concepts which will hook into the tooltips in Tooltips and Encyclopedia automatically. Alright, so maybe I should have just continued reading, and then I'd get my answer. Good job, Lambert. Make new lessons in the tutorial to cover their new systems and add more reactive advice or alerts, make new suggestions and situation descriptions, and hook into more notifications or toasts in the script. That's awesome. That's really cool. I love games that lean into being modder friendly, because games that don't lean into being modder friendly or actively try and harm the modding community, well, they die, but they can also go fuck themselves. Mods are awesome. They will never not be awesome, and if you don't accept that, you can sod off, basically, in my opinion. One of the aims of CK3 is to be even more moddable than CK2, which is gonna be very difficult because CK2 was pretty freaking moddable, which is already a very moddable game. Yeah, exactly. And one of those things we've looked into improving a lot is the interface modding. In CK2, at best, you could change some textures and move things a few pixels, but you could rarely add new things. In CK3, we've made a lot of things more easily scripted, so you can, by and large, create any new things just as we can. That is awesome news. That is really cool. Entire new menus, I'm imagining. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah, just being friendly to modders is always a good thing for a game. It shows a lot of confidence, I think, in your game if you are pro modding. So yeah, I'm entirely in favor of that. That's awesome. So in conclusion, we've worked on a lot of stuff. Actually, go back to this. They want to make CK3 even more moddable. I'm thinking the only part that is going to be less moddable is character portraits. Because of the 3D nature of them, it's a higher skill barrier for creating these kind of mods that change people's looks. But you know what? I'm thinking there are probably going to be some very skilled modders out there that are going to do it regardless. So, yeah, good luck to them. So yeah, in conclusion, we worked on a lot of stuff to make the depth and strategy of our games shine through in the choices you make, not the 20 minutes you spend trying to find the information to help you make these choices, because the interface is obtuse. Hopefully you've enjoyed the dev tour. If you want to chat more, I highly recommend joining our CK Discord server. Yeah, it's a pretty cool place. Bonus dev story. Ooh, okay. Once a month at the development studio, we spend a day, if your project is not an extra busy for a milestone or release, doing whatever we decide to grow our professional skills. This is how the Encyclopedia came about as my little baby over the multiple of these personal development days. I thought it would be fun to briefly walk people through its evolution from just an idea to full feature. To start with, it only included the game concepts and looked a lot less pretty, as art had yet to bless me with their time and wisdom. Here's a little screenshot of the grey box version that simply vomited out unformatted text and had a search bar. Yeah, that is fairly ugly. I wonder what censored is, though. Well, obviously, I know what censored means, but I wonder what is being censored. There's something behind there. Moving on from there, I wanted to reorganize it into this concept of pages, so we could also show information on things like all the traits in the game instead of you needing to find someone with the trait to discover what it does. I worked on that, and one of the artists generously used some of their time to give the whole thing a much-needed workover. And yeah, that looks so much better. That is a really, really nice UI. I'm so in favor of that. Also, this background art. Oh, Jesus, I want this. That looks sexy as hell. I love that. I want that. I want this background artwork. It's fucking awesome. From what little I can see, I love it. Our QA has then gone over this through the various iterations, raising any issues, especially once it was more in a beta state, to give it more suggestions for polish and find bugs for me to fix. Now that I had the text formatted nicer and some suggestions from QA, I started adding more and more pages to get to the ones we now have, as well as adding some more luxury features like a search history, better interaction with hotkeys, showing all pages at once, and some debug functionality. One of the technical problems I ran into was the hot reloading of files crashing the game now. In our debug builds, we attach file watchers to all game files, so if you change the values of a trait or add a new building type, then the game will update its databases internally and update or add those new things. Basically, what this means is they can reload the game with the new features without having to actually reload the game. But the problem with that is the Encyclopedia was pointing now to the invalid memory of the old entries we'd deleted. The solution to this was adding reload callbacks to fix up the encyclopedia by flushing out its old data and regenerating it. Internally, this just means that the encyclopedia instead has to register a bunch of page generators that it can rerun instead of using the actual database objects, which can be corrupted if modified and the pointers invalidated. Then, with a little bit more polish and tweaking, finally get it into the state that it is now in, which will hopefully prove useful to you all whilst playing. And yeah, I think it will. I think it's a really, really nice feature, for sure. Now, before we end, let's go to the forums themselves and look for some dev comments. So, yeah, Black Ninja here, this is Matthew. And so, he's got one comment so far. I'm just going to pop a quick refresh, see if he's added any extras in the time that I've been talking. No, he hasn't. Okay. So, the tooltips and encyclopedia look great. How many of these project days did it take until the other devs supported it as a real feature? From a modding perspective, do toasts get triggered automatically when a new trait is gained, or are there special commands for it? Also, regarding interface modding, is it possible to make new UI pages with character portraits of specific characters based on a relationship, jobs and minor titles, or even event targets? For example, one might want a throne room UI element which shows the most important characters of a realm on one page. That'd be cool. I'd love that. So it was supported after the first day, showing that it was possible to have something. It picked up more support at the end of the second day after art made it look a lot prettier and it felt more like something we can actually use in-game. Toasts and notifications are often triggered by script events. We sent a couple from the code when it needs to happen, regardless of if the script called it or the code did. A lot of them are scripted. And finally, for the last one, you can make new interface elements which are children of other interface, but not add brand new windows. You can work around that by adding the new windows as a child of the main HUD window. I'm looking at adding support for doing your own windows entirely, but it's not been a high priority as there is a workaround for it, and it only affects mods. So, yes, and there's a workaround. So, modders are great at looking for workarounds. It's kind of like their entire thing. So, yeah, cool. Great dev diary. Much more interesting dev diary than the past few, purely because we just had a bit of a spam of lifestyles, and that stopped being interesting after the first couple. Or it didn't stop being interesting, but it stopped feeling new. It stopped feeling like something I was looking forward to learning about. If you know what I mean. So yeah, dev diary. Very happy with it. I love it. But I'd love to know what you guys think. So please do leave your comments in the comment section below. Let me know your thoughts. Chuck me a like if you liked the video. If you want to keep up to date on all CK3 news and updates, then pop me a subscribe button, click, smash it, or whatever. Fuck it, who cares? Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.